the difference between a nightmare and a dream. And when there's a certain point where you start recognizing that most people live a nightmare, right? And it's like, well, what's a nightmare? It's something that progressively gets worse, that has been consistent from the beginning, that continues to persist, that you will never get. So when things get good, they're not things to get good, it's for things to get worse, but not worse, 4 times as worse, right? And so you could say, well, it's much worse to experience a childhood trauma when you're in your late 40s than it is to experience it in your 20s, because now you're in your 40s experiencing despair of something you could never escape that has been there your whole life. So it's not just terror of what you're going to interact with in your life, it's a cosmic terror that you can never escape, not even in death, because what makes you think that'll be any different? And so here's how a nightmare works. Now it's also, there's a pivotal point to recognizing you're in one, to realize the difference between you creating a nightmare and you building a dream are both real realities. The shift is recognizing you like it. Well, when people go, well, you like it? How could I like anything like that? Well, pretty easy actually. You can get people to like the worst of things. If you expose them to those worst of things at a very young age. And eventually it won't even become the worst of things. They'll find comfort in it. You know when people really freak out? It's when they're in a loving relationship. Well, of course, why they freak out? Well, because you're interacting with the one thing you don't know how to interact with. And what are you feeling? All of your insecurities and shame. You're feeling inadequacy. But I'm in a loving relationship. I'm not supposed to feel like this. Well, maybe you have different cards dealt. Maybe you're going to learn something about yourself and about human nature, and you're going to integrate that into the ideal you're looking for. You can't receive this relationship right now, so maybe you can accept that. Good things are not for everyone. And it's because everyone, most people, don't understand the responsibility that good things take. You will see what it takes and how much it will challenge you and what it requires you to open up to of things that have happened in your past. And then you will start incorporating that into your life and recognizing that maybe love is just the beginning. And actually you could say, well, that's the beginning of transformation. Well, somebody who can incorporate that very love and a recognition that that is something that they need to learn to interact with before they're at any particular outcome. So you have, or just a story about my client really recently, she was telling me about this nightmare. And it's like, well, here's a nightmare. This is her nightmare. She experienced a trauma when she was younger. What was the trauma? Well, her mother was very harsh and critical, and her dad was very repressed, and they're very, very traditional. And so you could imagine that all of these things around tyranny and authority were things that she took as a form of control, because there's no safety in the household. And then you start talking about people feeling safe in the household. The answer is nobody fucking does, right? And that's just what I was telling you before, is that I was watching a TV show with my nieces and nephews, and I could feel a part of me that was like, oh, we should probably turn this off. Because Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared was playing with existential concepts like death and human behavior and the fakeness of human interactions and the masks that people wear and the characters that they play, and they really give you a good idea of what they look like. Because you're like the sum total of the 3 characters. And anybody who's ever seen Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, like honestly let me know, because I feel like I'm the only person that's watched this. But I decided to watch they released a TV show of it, same guys who wrote it. And I noticed it was like, oh, is this going to scare the girls? Oh, they're a little young. It's like, yeah, we're kind of like novices to this whole thing called life. Like, you know when you're exposed to death for the first time? The parents kind of like slap their head and they're like, okay, like things I don't have an answer to.
Yeah.
Because truthfully, you don't. And then, of course, the TV show starts playing into that. And then one of the Muppets is like, hey, because everything turns out to life. Like that's kind of the whole thing. Like this can of soda will be like, I'm a can of soda, drink me quickly, right? Kind of like Sesame Street.
Yeah.
Or like the lamp will turn on and be like, one bedtime story before you go to sleep, but it'll be super dark, right? And then one of the Muppets is like, what happens when I die, right? And then the lamp goes, well, you go to the council, right? And it's making ridiculous dogmatic bullshit. And then even the lamp realizes it doesn't have an answer. And it's like, all right, good night now. And it turns it off, right? And I was looking at my nieces and I was wondering if this was something that like terrified them. And it's like, well, what terrified them? Existence. Like a fear of life is a real thing. So going back to the whole nightmare thing, and this is the thing about a nightmare, is it consistently gets worse. And once you thought it couldn't, it will show you that there's imagination in how things can get worse. And sometimes that nightmare is your life. And you're like, well, what's the pivotal direction between this and this? And you'll find this one really interesting. So she was raised, traditional parents, constantly neglected. She had a brother, even worse. Because if you had a sister, then maybe you could be joint in your suffering. And so what she always saw, that the boy got all the attention, right? Well, that's going to be true, especially for particular homes, the more traditional ones.
Right.
And even she came from an Oriental family, so even more so. And it was like, okay, well, this is going to be a lot of fun, you know, because they don't really know how to interact with that. And she would always talk to her mom, why don't I have ribbons in my hair? Why is it I feel that, you know, I'm not like appreciated or loved or any of these characteristics? I want that. And well, of course, the mother didn't know it. The mother's mother didn't even know that. And this is something that's been passed down. And she then goes, okay, well, then that started, I had to start competing with my brother because he got all the attention. But then I realized that if I was more like a man, then I can get that. And then you're starting to notice now there's also societal narratives, right? And the narratives are like, confirm everything that happened in childhood. Here you go, the solution, right? And you're like, and you get the solution. Years go by. Well, she feels that she's a broken woman. She married a broken man. And he felt he's a broken man, and they had a broken family. And then as you thought that was bad enough, right? And she always wanted children her whole life. Turns out her husband can't have children, right? And now this is when you have to go slow down. What's happening right now? If I don't actually start incorporating the bigger picture, this nightmare is all I'll have. Because it's nihilistic at its core, by the way. To let a nightmare progress, to not look anywhere deeper, to not start just like when you might say, well, it's the coping effect of humanity to put meaning to these very things. It's like actually on the contrary, because you'll notice somebody that does completely transforms the way they see reality as not up or down. It no longer becomes that. It becomes your being expanded and people invited as it expands and continues in all directions, in all dimensions, past, present, future.
Can I ask what her relationship is with religion?
Shit. She was raised Catholic.
Okay.
And all of that had to do with the rejection of dark nature. Well, she has plenty of it. And of course, her mother's interpretation of God is so convenient to her neuroses, which I find is so funny. If you actually ask most people, and if you want to know, talk to the person and then talk to them about what they believe God is. God is the wall to everything that is God. At least their definition is. And so their perception is so poorly imaginative that it protects them from everything that would actually allow them to discover God. And so then they create an ideology around it. And they kind of find the perfect thing that dogmatically you can withdraw. And they use things like theology. And they destroy people with the name of God. And it's painful, it's disgusting. And fuck that version of God you believe in, because that's not God. That's a disgrace to everything that is divine. And the worst part is you're using it in vain, because you're using it as a shield and you're hiding behind something you have no connection to. And of course that affected her. And you went, so, well, this is a lot of traumas. And like, how are we going to help this person out? Well, then it turns out, you know, she gets married. Her husband can't have children. She has to get a donor. And of course, this is playing into all of her husband's narratives about he's a broken man and he's not enough as one. And he has the exact identical childhood, just reversed on the masculine end. And you know, well, they're both here in their 40s, experiencing hell. And then she has 2 children. And the one thing she wants is this tender, affectionate relationship. They're both autistic. Now, okay, this isn't dark, because you're going to start recognizing there's a point where you laugh. Now, I'm not saying this because I'm insensitive to it. It's because I'm really listening and paying attention. And what I'm really listening and paying attention to is, when are you going to look a little deeper? When are you going to start recognizing what you're living without, that you continue to reinforce is okay? And then she told me today, you know, what it really is I am expecting everyone to love me. Everyone. And I don't even know what it is. And I have destroyed my marriage. I have destroyed my life. I have been living with a lie and I've been continuing to reinforce it. This is destroying my soul and I can recognize it is. And I want it to stop. And so you could say, what's the difference between a nightmare and a dream? It's when the monsters stop chasing you and you start chasing the monsters until you become one. And then you start recognizing that if nightmares are real, so are dreams. And if dreams are different than nightmares, then they constantly get better and could expand into something you never believed could be better. Yet, of course, there's going to be plenty of work to go through before you can, you know, escape your nightmare. There's a certain point you don't want to leave it, because that's all you've known. And I think most people experience the nightmare and they go, I want to leave. And you go, no, you don't. You like it here. That's your best friend. That monster's been chasing you your whole life. That's the only love you've known. There's no love in this. Well, take a closer look. It's part of reality. And then they're like, no, I don't believe that. Well then, okay, of course, go back to the merry-go-round a few times until you slow down, until you look at it again and you start to go, oh, well, that's a part of me, and that's a part of me. Well, then I'm not accepting it. If I'm not accepting it, how can I not love it? Well, actually, I don't want to leave it. Because, you know, when you're a tiptoed line between the dream and the nightmare, you start recognizing you like the nightmare. You meet the love of your life, and you look at her, and she's everything that you could ever imagine, and she's kind and gracious and like connected, passionate, and you're like, I don't like the way this makes me feel. Well, good, congratulations. You're going to experience what it's like to have cold sweats at night, to be around something that's good for you, because things that are good for you are actually more challenging than things that you know. And most people know things that are destructive, that hurt them, that are malevolent, that are chaotic. And they refuse to integrate them, thinking they won't bring that into their life, making it a living hell. And so there was a certain point where I said, you understand what I'm saying here is right now is why would I expect anything less from the next guy you meet even after this divorce? We know it's going to get worse, right? And it's like, well, why is it going to get worse? And this isn't what I'm trying to say. There's a certain point you laugh, right? Because it's such a perfectly timed tragedy that you start to recognize that, no, this requires you to go deeper than what your ego is making it. Mm-hmm. You are refusing reality, and it's knocking on your door, and it's confirming every bias about your life so that you can feel sorry for you. That's not why you're here. And anybody who feels sorry for themselves is essentially entitled. They're entitled, and they live with a few words that they like to throw around. I deserve this, and fair. Fair? Excuse me? I'm 6'3", you're not. Mm-hmm. Well, you're 6'3", so who made you that tall? How tall are your parents?
6'1" and 5'5".
Okay, well, then there's something in the stars for you, you know?
Yeah.
I can't say that's true for my dad's 5'10". My mother is 5'5", on a good day, 5'6".
Right.
And then you start noticing other people who have diseases and other people who don't. And, some person dies at 16, the other dies at 20. And all of these things are at 40, even at 70, 80, but just the whole point is that we start holding on to these things, and that's not the point of your life. Well, the point of it is to live it, to experience it. And sometimes the things that have the most wisdom in it are the unexplainable. Mm-hmm. And there's something that you could experience. And what I'm trying to say, that there's a point where you laugh, is where you start recognizing that you have to go deeper than what you're making it. And perhaps you like your head stuck up your ass. And so that's the thing that I find is very interesting, is how can somebody let a nightmare propel into worse? So you could say, well, the person that's most sensitive to that would go, stop, done, what's this all about? Mm-hmm. At 44 years old, she said she asked herself for the first time in her life that question. And she came down to recognizing that she never believed that she'll ever be loved, and she doesn't even know what love is and what makes her think she'll have it anywhere in her life. I said, if you can accept that, there's love there. Mm-hmm. Because you know what it takes to accept the unacceptable? Something that's beyond reason. And I feel that love functions that way. And you might even say, well, it's impossible. How the hell can I interact with something I've never seen in my whole life? Well, are you ready to feel hopeless and start developing belief? Mm-hmm. And you might go, what? Yeah, are you ready to feel hopeless and start developing belief? What you're really asking to do, to most people at least, is to invite everything they have ran from their whole life. And I could even take a story myself, and it was like, when things get worse, hopelessness, right? And that's what most people feel when they're in a nightmare, is they're hopeless. Well, something's got to change. Your story's got to change. Maybe you're chasing the monsters, but you're telling yourself they're chasing you, mm-hmm. right? And that's a big story change, right? Where you realize who's hunting who. And maybe you're just running around a table and they're just running from you, but you think they're running to you, so maybe turn around, right? But most people will never do that, well, because they'll find something to confirm a narrative that keeps them protective. And so this leads to the second part of the conversation that I really wanted to get into, that I believe would be tremendously insightful. You can't escape your survival mechanisms. Sorry. Here's what your ego tells you. You can. And if you do, you'll get what you want. And sometimes we have these races, these weird arbitrary races, like a race with two philosophies, right?
Yeah.
One of the philosophies says, become who you want to be, who you tell yourself you need to be. That'll give you what you want. The other philosophy says, no, be who you are, connect to that. And you're like, why does that other one exist? That you could say is your performances of things that aren't, right? Well, it's like, well, here's the thing. You have to start recognizing that when people are born, they're not just born with a survival mechanism that gets incorporated. It was there before and it just grew, just like your essence did. And actually, it was the very reason your essence did grow at all. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, what's the responsibility of my life? Well, learning that part of me as much as I learn my essence. And you could say, well, there's the self, right? The bridge between you and the universe or God. And it's the place where you can interact and communicate with that. And then you have something that's in direct opposition to it. And so like taking one of my stories, the dating scene has been hell for me because what has it been confirming? All I've known my whole life. Here's another person who's being deceitful and two-faced, who's telling me they're serious when really they're seeing somebody else and they're not telling me about it as we're going on a fucking date, right? Okay, how many times? Well, not once. The next day, I meet another girl and we were supposed to go out. She goes, I got back with my ex, just wanted to tell you, right? And then what's happening? Despair, right? Hopelessness. But then what am I realizing I lack? Belief. Because I'm living based off the pattern I know. And then I was like, right? You get frustrated, you get really upset, and you're going to be taken somewhere you don't like.
Right.
Well, where am I going to be taken? The place that I believe all men, particularly, and I also believe anybody who's ever experienced reality before, hates to feel powerless. Well, then you're going to feel all of your vulnerabilities, you're going to feel all of your doubts, all of your insecurities. And by the way, the experience of this is way different than the analysis of it. And by the way, like go back to my content like a year and a half ago. It's pure analysis. This is experience and mwah, it's rich. I feel it in my teeth. You want to swish it around. You want the flavor in your gums. You want it coming out your eyelids, you know? That's how good it feels. That's how much I feel. That's how much it hurts. And it's the greatest gift I've ever been given. So what I've been able to recognize is that I felt that, there was too much resistance in the process of transformation for transformation to be done through just getting past resistance. That sounds a little bit interesting. What is it I'm resisting? Is it a part of me or is it just something I put up there? Right? And now this is where the deeper questions start to come in. So going back to that whole thing of, things are getting worse, is looking like a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then the other girl that I went on a date with, she didn't reach out back to me. She was leaving back to Australia. And I was like, okay, you make a cow noise and you spiral out for a little bit. And then just before you thought it can get worse, it gets worse, right? Sunday. I don't think I've ever felt hopelessness like that before. I called one of my friends and I said, don't tell anybody. I'm feeling hopeless. And I also, by the way, I started feeling disassociative. And there's a certain point where I refused feeling sad and started feeling sorry for myself. You might go, well, what's the difference between that? Well, here it goes. Feeling sad is a very deep, profound emotion that allows you to connect with yourself, to reflect deeply, to evaluate, embrace, and come closer to. You better know what that feels like. If you have not felt that before, then you won't be able to experience this melancholic beauty of the universe and its deep isolation and the vastness of it that feels very, very isolating, but in the midst of it all, it's a breath of fresh air and it pierces the soul and it lets you know you're alive. Most people can't allow themselves to feel that. Oh, God forbid, that's the devil. So I felt that way too. So I struggled with my whole life, being able to even allow myself to experience it. And I gave him a call and I told him, I'm feeling really hopeless. And really, I noticed that I started feeling sorry for myself. And then when I started feeling sorry for myself, I started victimizing. But then I said, how am I victimizing? And you're going to love this. I didn't just start victimizing in a way that was, oh, poor me. No. That's not that obvious. And most people are unaware of how they victimize. And they actually like victimizing. Well, because it's a great way to not feel or experience what you're feeling and experiencing. And there's many ways to feel powerful through victimizing. Because there's a certain point where you're hurt by something, you're owed by it. And actually, there's a certain point where you're hurt by something and you do your best all the time, don't you? As your finger is subtly pointed to God and his cruel ways because you're so perfect. So it's deeply egotistical. And you could say you could stop victimizing by identifying how you have been. Do you know how much courage that takes? Anytime I get somebody to talk about a childhood trauma, or anytime they have been, they have to either explain the situation and why things are better now, because they do that all the time, or they talk about how the thing that has hurt them has now changed. I'm like, what's happening here? No. If you got hit by a car, you got hit by a car. That's a trauma, okay? If this happened to you by your mom, or this happened to you from your dad, or this happened from your uncle or a friend at school, then that happened to you. And it's interesting that just by saying that to people, you're not just incorporating that, you're bringing in the relationship with how they felt when they had no control over what reality did to them. And now, if you want to think about one of the things we have no control of at all is love. You do not control it. Tragedy, you don't control that either. Love and tragedy, play a nice little dance. You sure you want it now? So, I told my friend, I'm feeling this hopelessness, and things were just getting worse because it's like, man, back in the dating scene, it's worse than I left it. Fuck. And I noticed I dipped out internally. I was gone. My head was up my ass. I wanted to find something to bark at. And so I have a very elaborate victimization. It's when I fight the good fight, but I'm also bleeding out at the same time. The valiant warrior and simultaneously the wounded victim, something's off here, right? But I didn't know that. And so I decided to watch a movie called Poor Things.
Oh, you saw it?
Holy shit. The fucking movie, first time through, when I was experiencing this, I was like, the fucking feminist agenda, excuse me? Who the fuck made this movie? Is a sick fucking motherfucker. I was losing my mind. I became unrecognizable to me, and it was even worse. And there was a certain point where I recognized, I went like this, bop, 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 bop. And then I looked around and I was like, of course I watched this movie.
Yeah.
You see the difference now? And it's like, well, what changed? I listened. I opened myself up to what the experience really was saying, which was, why do you think you deserve some sort of divine intervention in the midst of your spiral that you like? You don't want it. And also think of it this way. If a kid was having a tantrum and he's stomping and kicking his legs going, mommy and daddy don't love me because they won't give me a lollipop. If you were given the lollipop, you are not loved. And when people experience this, they're looking for the lollipop. No, you don't want the lollipop. That's divine neglect if you got that right now. In fact, actually, what you want to realize is the point where your conscious will, you are inspired by a truth outside of the nightmare and you act on that goodness. And you can let it go. And by the way, it happens really quick. And so the next morning I go to my coach's office and he tells me, Naftali, you like being stuck. And then it dawned on me. I was like, I like this. And well, then how much did I like it? Well, I compared it to a dog barking at a wall. And I'm the dog that's outside of the cage, that's on the path, that's barking at the wall. And I was like, well, that's very visual. I even actually drew it down if you want to see it. It's pretty cute. It's a cute drawing.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think I recommend it to most people is that if you ever like kind of have a way to like understand it, or if you use a metaphor, draw the metaphor, you know, and I suck at drawing and you can too. And the best part is you actually realize you don't need to be good. You just need to give it a shot. And then you'll actually communicate something. And you'll get better. You definitely will get better. You should see my first fucking drawing. Stick figures. Limited. I don't think, yeah, interesting. So there's a dog on a path. Clearly there's a tunnel at the end, so it's unknown. And on the other side of it is a bunch of dogs on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
And those dogs are behind a fence. The dog that's not decides to interact with the dogs barking with him. And so this was the interesting visual that I had, which was just like, okay, I didn't like it there. Yeah. You think the dogs scare me? Like, and also, and I recognize a few other things about life, which is I'm more concerned about being right than doing what's right for me. Well, not only did I recognize I want to be more concerned about being right, I actually like it here. I like the two-faced women. I like the Machiavellianism. I like the narcissism. I like the psychopathy. I like the fact that they're not going to be anything that's new that I haven't experienced. I like how I know it's the same story and I can get that hit. And I also like that I can tell other people I try so damn well when, truth be told, I like the feeling I get from other people more than actually changing myself, because it's easier to fool others than be somebody who changes. What like read the real thing?
Yeah.
Why would I do that? People think I already am. That's your ego, and then you get left with what you have because it diminishes so quick because there's no heart. I wanted to scale a business and remove the heart from the thing that allowed it to run, thinking it's going to. And then I realized I don't want to grow. I like my bullshit. I want to stay right here, period. Then I looked at it and was like, that felt real. That felt real. And then the next day I woke up and I thought of the movie Poor Things. I was like, that was an incredible film. The way I was looking at it was not at all the way the film was designed. I know the director, he's not very political. He doesn't care to put in agendas or narratives. He's an artist. And if he's an artist, it had an effect on me. And it had an effect on me even after the fact. And it's actually telling a story through the lens of a person who's an emotional baby. and this is what it looks like. And it's really the story of a majority of women thinking that if they do not develop emotional maturity, this is what men looks like, this is what your life becomes, and this is who you are. And by the end of it, you're sipping a martini. What you think a woman is nothing but a slave that does what you want them to do. And every man is nothing but a dog. Who just wants to conquer. And great, you get to sip your martini and read your fucking Ernest Hemingway. You're royally fucked. You have not grown up. You have confirmed your worldview. And here's your castle. That's hell. But before, I couldn't watch it.
Yeah.
So you could say that when things start to spiral and get worse, and they keep getting worse, think of how creatively they get worse and start recognizing, I did that. That's incredible. And by the way, this is the ultimate philosophy of understanding what stuck really means and what stuck really looks like, is that you have to start expanding yourself outside of what you've identified with in the process of you growing. You think that you want to just because you started at one point. What makes you think you want to grow to the levels that truly challenge you is something you constantly question yourself and reevaluate your commitments to, because maybe you don't want to, and that is okay. And we hate that one because, we would love to know that on the other side of it we get the love that we want. Who says it's not here right now? The fact that we're even having this conversation and this kind of openness, not just me and you, but you can have with yourself, you start to recognize that exist here, and that's challenging. And we like the word deserving because then maybe we can control something to be deserving for that very thing we need. But what if we got rid of that mechanism and you are enough now? That's more challenging than you're enough after, because you can live with what you're familiar with, the conditional transactional relationship you've had with love your whole life, and maybe you don't know it. In fact, maybe you don't even want it. And you go, well, that's not true. I look back. What happens in this drill, what I found is really interesting, is a dissolution of the ego, because it now no longer identifies with your own betterment. It starts to let you identify the part of human nature that wants to burn your life down. What if those two can become friends? That's a whole different story, isn't it? And so then the next part of the survival mechanism, it's really important for people to understand that it's a part of you. We have narratives about how that's incorporated, that something bad happened and then it created, and then you became performative, and then you became disingenuous, right? And then you became tactical and manipulative, and then you became narcissistic and psychotic. Like, no, it's been there the whole time. Like, look at your mom and dad. They had a child, and that child was you, and that was also there too. And you could even say that's your shadow, that's your darkness, right? And it's utilized as a form of capacity. It's a driving form, but it's also a protective one. And you also might find it very interesting, to say the least, that it's very, very challenging to how you perceive yourself. So what if you could interact with a point to where you can let that function authentically and develop a relationship with it the same way you develop a relationship with your so-called essence? There's a certain point, and this is something I found really powerful in healing, especially for me, is that you need to become aware of the things that exist within you. You need to become aware of the thing that turns the switch on and off. Here's what happens when people live unconsciously. Switches on, things are good. Switches off, despair. Switches on, things are good. Switches off, despair. Things are off. Stays off. Stays off. Therapist, I need help. Rabbi, I need help. Priest, I need help. Stays off. Stays off. Somebody help me. Somebody help me. No one's going to help me. Please, somebody. And they hit rock bottom, flip on. And you're like, what? Well, because they had to hit a point to where they realized they had nothing to lose, that why not just give it another switch? And then, so now here's what happened. This is the change in my life, is where I recognized I had this thing. And you could say, well, that's free will, by the way. You have to become aware of what that consciously looks like to become aware of it. And you might just go, well, a choice is simple as a choice. Well, not really, because there's a whole lot of unintegrated factors that you haven't incorporated that you're completely unaware of. And maybe you should read the Adam and Eve story, because that would give you a much, much better idea of the dimensions of what it takes in order for you to really make something what you call free will. Because you're too left to your own vices. You're too unconscious. Maybe you need a little consciousness. Here's your mistake. Out the garden you go. And that's loving too, by the way. Because, maybe you need that. And it's like, well, that's actually really beautiful, that maybe the creation that has been created exists with more vices than it thought could handle. Well, that's not the case, because you were made as one, so you're born for it. And then you start recognizing the dimensions that exist with the person, and perhaps maybe even more despair increases. But the beautiful part is who says you're doing that alone? So it's the incorporation of belief and faith now. So how many things can you do to create more and more of that very thing you've been avoiding, so much to the point where you recognize that you're not the one doing it, something else is.
Right.
Something else within you that's connected to something far bigger that you can call God. And that's something that exists intrinsically with every human being that they refuse to interact with, that keeps their imagination pure, their faith weak, and the person they are invisible. So we look for that finger turning the switch. And so what I found was interesting is I'd say for the first time in my life, I felt that I've had a room to experience both. And I'll tell you what my switch on looks like is a lot more emotions, a lot more sensitivity, a lot more compassion, a lot more openness, a lot more tenderness, a lot more gentleness. And when the switch is off, it's Wolverine. It's go time. It's porn mode. It's hunter mode. I want everything that I've known up to this point that kept me safe. And you know what happened when the light switch would turn off? I'd go to my coach, "I'll be it happen again. I turn into this monster," right? It's like, okay. Who turned the switch off again? It happened. It was a trigger because something I couldn't experience. Now, do you see how that's also partly a problem?
Yeah.
What you're putting on the problem is that you're actually avoiding something that is you. It's like your right hand avoiding your left hand. You're like, no, get out of here, right? And you beat it away. It's not there anymore. Aha, look at me. We've overcome, right? And then eventually you overcorrect and you hit this one. You're living without a part of yourself. And I've noticed that's exactly what healing is connecting back to parts of yourself that are more like you than you've ever needed, that at first appeared as enemies and turns to a brother. It's a relationship we're talking about here. We're talking about connection here. And this is what constitutes connection, and the depth of what connection requires you to be open up to. And perhaps your foundation is too weak to even be open to an idea that maybe your life has purpose to it. And also that these things are universal. And I've spoken to so many people at this point that I've recognized that this exists within every individual. And that path is there for them. It's just a question of if they're willing to even take it.
Yeah.
So what I found was interesting about when I turned the switch off now at this point is that I'm able to spend more time with the lights off. And you might go, well, then how do I get the lights on and off at the same time? That doesn't work. Now, you want to become familiar with those states that you have. And so now I was able to quantify it this way. You have your essence and you have your survival mechanism. And what we often do is we talk about, how this isn't us, when we want to be this. But then when we're this, we want to be this. So you're showing a poor relationship with both. Now, this is where the real growth happens, is when you have the awareness to realize who's turning on and off the switch. That's the first step. And then you could learn even more about yourself based off why you prefer modes of being and what you avoid in one. And then as you're in the other, what you avoid of the other. And eventually, they can become loving brothers in an embrace, or lovers that emerge into one. And you know, that's a really interesting story, because now it's no longer the story that you need to live without parts of yourself, that life has done something to break you. But the very things that you believe have broken you, have strengthened you, and have helped strengthen the very thing you were born to be. Damn. So it's been a crazy week, and I've honestly been noticing that I've been rejecting a lot of what my survival mechanisms have that are a part of me. And we have our narratives that they're not. The truth is, get to know them.
Yeah.
They're your best friend.
You have to know them.
Get to know them. And I was always afraid of, family and children, because, maybe when things are good, I'm doing good, but what about when things are bad? Do I know that side of me? Thank God I'm becoming very close friends. And now this is where things have shifted. I used to feel that if I was in one, the incorporation of the other was suicide. Meaning that it's impossible to live with both. There's been a shift in my life that made me realize, not only do you live with both, they both want your best. Isn't that what a protective mechanism wants? Well, this happened, we're not going to go there. But then you go, get away from me. You're not even addressing the thing that has actually allowed you to get here.
Right.
Okay? And by the way, there's so much darkness that needs to be integrated, so much of humanity that is there, so much beauty that's there, such a beauty that's expansive, such a truth that we need, that transcends the reason of what we define as reason. That's not reason at all. And we need that, because that's when you start developing faith. It's not just a question of developing certain sets of characteristics and whatnot. It's like, it's developing a connection to life and a connection to yourself. And that's definitely something we've never tried before. And why not? Let's try something new, because I've already seen the whole thing where you adopt a whole list of tasks and you identify with some sort of significance to lie to yourself about this is your kind of life. I mean, it sounds like hell to me. Most people would rather live that nightmare, because, the idea of a dream is far more terrifying.
Yeah.
You don't know what that feels like. Well, one of the last things that I wanted to share before we wrap this up is I'm recognizing that they both seek your best interest. And so it's this mode that I kind of enter, and it's difficult. It's when I start experiencing a lot of hopelessness around romantic relationships. I enter a hunter state, and it's really powerful, by the way. Whoa. It's like charm turned up to 2,000. My awareness utilized for a chess game to get what I need, while playing just enough into their projection to where they think they're safe. And I can keep going day after day after day after day until I get what I need. And that's pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. Now, the whole thing about that is like, people have these things, well, that wasn't me, it was just the lightning struck at the wrong time of the day and that popped out. If that's all it takes for that part of you to come out, and then you don't even take ownership for that being a part of you, you've already told me how much shame you feel for it, and how much fear you experience around it. Am I safe around you? You're not even safe around you. You're one argument away from the devil. Mm-hmm. So you're showing that there's a very, very poor sign of integration. And this is what integration looks like. And so I was noticing that over the weekend that has been very, very prominent there, because I've been feeling such a longing for connection, such a desire for it. And I hate how much I feel it. And it's like, well, what part of me hates how much I feel it? And I was like, well, you could say my protective mechanisms hate how much I feel it. But then it was actually something, there's a certain point where that by allowing them both to have room, one of them was able to say, I hate how much I feel I want you. And then I realized they both want each other. I want to feel that. And it was something I wrote down, and I wrote down, I hate that I want it so much. I really just said, I love that I want it so much.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just, it was yesterday, I just wanted to keep going out and hunt. You know, I just wanted to get what I wanted, whatever it was, flesh, just a girl in my bed. I just, you know, someone, you know. And there's a certain point where as I was driving, I said, you know, I didn't say don't hunt, which is what I usually said. I said, go hunt. Mm-hmm. I'm here for you. Mm. And I heard that voice from the inside out, and I was like, the protective part of me said, I want to go home. I want to know what this is. I feel I want this as much as you do. And what's interesting is that we're looking for love we don't quite understand. Love you don't quite understand comes in the form of two. If you don't know that's how you discover love, then you will always have the nightmare. And let me tell you my nightmare, because, you know, I talked about somebody else's nightmare. I'll tell you my nightmare.
Yeah.
My nightmare is that I'll never be loved for who I am, and that I need to compartmentalize a part of myself, and that I have to always cut off a part of me in order to be loved. That's the convenient narrative. The real narrative is I don't know the love that I want and need. In fact, I'm here in the process of learning that very love. Clearly it exists within me, but when you guys go down deep enough and you're dealing with wounds, think of it this way. It's a cracked mirror. And it's at a level that you're not familiar seeing yourself at. So it's a double whammy.
Yeah.
And it's broken into two fragments, and it's kind of like a convex. And you're like, that I like, and this I don't like. And you're like, but this doesn't satisfy me, and then this I'm slightly drawn to. You're like, what? That sounds like hell, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And, well, for me, it looked like this. And it's like, well, this is what healing looked like. And it was at 22 is when I really officially started this. Really. And it came quick. And wisdom comes quick when you're willing to be real. Maybe be real about where you're at. And it's like, well, because who's the one really doing the transforming? Like, for a second, slow down. It's not you. Something much bigger that you get to connect yourself to that aligns you towards that. Uh-huh. So, my nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I used to have nightmares all the time as a kid. Couldn't escape them. Sleep paralysis up until the age of 15. And there's a certain point where I said, no, I'm done. I'm done feeling. And then they stopped. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I won. At least you think.
Yeah.
And then you get into a relationship with every single repressed part of yourself. And you go, I wish I was single. That's humility right there, right? You know, actually, when I left the relationship, I realized I'm nothing but a monkey, right? Like a buffoon, thinking that I knew what I wanted, and that I've been left to my own vices, and that perhaps I should go deeper, because if I go deeper, I'll find something beyond me that actually can help me get connected to what I need.
Yeah.
And then what you need is so contrary to everything you've told yourself you need to become, because it's exactly who you were born as. And you've created everything in resistance to that. So what's in the way? All of your darkness, your protective mechanisms. So let's become friends. And you shake hands and you get ready and you draw your swords and you get fucked up and you love each other at the end. And maybe that's the story, that's the beginning of a love story. But for me, it looked like this, and I think you find this interesting, that there's this fragment. And a lot of people have it, so they don't really know how to understand or receive love. And so they'll have the woman that they find as the object of sexual desire and passion that fulfills them and allows them to experience life in the present. It's the eros, it's everything you need. And then the other is going to be the one you're not attracted to, but wants to be nurturing, loving, and caring, and have children and raise a family. She's the epitome of all of your ideals. Now, if you guys want to know something, both of these aren't real people. They're both not real. Because what happens in the real world is you'll meet this maxi skirt girl, and you'll go, oh, the one with all the values and the things that I bring. And it's like, well, deep down, she's like a really, really horny girl, and she feels a lot of shame for it. Well, then you have the whore, right? She doesn't feel any shame for any of those things, so she'll do it indiscriminately. But you actually feel shame for the fact that you like her. And not only do you feel shame for the fact that you like her, she feels shame for the fact that somebody can like her.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the whole point. And then now you're trying to work something out that can't be worked out, and they both can't be worked out. And then what ends up happening when you pick one? You're never getting your needs met. And isn't that difficult about what is it like to meet your needs? Well, you need to know you and what you need. And you also have to be willing to see and see how this wound has manifested. And I want to show you guys what real healing looks like, and I think you would find this really beautiful. Is that I have had these nightmares, right? And it mirrored in my life. And it's that, I was always rejected for the dark parts of me. And then I was always rejected for the other parts of me when I was interacting with the dark parts of me.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is pretty much showing me that I'm unintegrated from something that I have a belief issue around, which is I don't believe that these things could exist on their own, because I live with very little faith. I live with very little faith that somebody would exist to do good. And when I was about 20, I stopped dreaming from about 15 to 19.
You didn't stop dreaming altogether.
Like almost 100%.
Really?
Yeah, almost 100%. I went complete and total unconsciousness. And that was another thing, is that that was a sign that I didn't want to feel or experience anymore, is that my dreams stopped reflecting reality and reality stopped reflecting dreams. I'd have some dreams throughout,
Right.
but they were never anything of significance to me.
Right.
But then when I turned the system back on again, right? Remember, you're the one who turns on and off the switch, right?
Yep.
I flipped the switch back on. I recognized that this shit was running the whole time. It's got some rust on it, so I'm going to spend some time here. I wanted to grow that again. And so what at first used to happen in my dreams is that I would always be a girl that I wanted to be intimate with, and I'd be in my childhood home. That's actually where the dream stopped happening.
When did that start?
I moved to the new house. That happened when I was 15, 14, around then. And what I found was really interesting was how I kept having these dreams that I would want to be intimate with this girl, and I'd just try to find a room that was closed, but there would never be any locks, or the doors would sign to be open, or there'd be family get-togethers, and I could never be intimate with this girl. And it was just like, okay, well, we have to move quick. And it was like, well, that's the only way I could experience love, is if it was fast, and if it was hot, and if it was feverish. And it's like, well, these are signs and reflective of a lot of wounds, right? And then what was the other variable in the dream? My mother would always, and you're like, this is the worst dream you could ever have. She goes, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be doing this. And so you have your dick out with a girl, your mother's breaking down the door. And I wouldn't just have that dream once. And then when I opened up to that dream when I was 22 and I accepted my life, like genuinely accepted my life as it is, the next morning I had a dream. Next night I had a dream, and that dream looked just like that, childhood home, but this time with my ex. So now it's starting to have new variables in it.
Yeah.
And my mother trying to cut that off. You're not allowed to be doing that, whatever it was. And the first thing I felt was despair. I'm like, even now it's still happening? My mom. Right? What, she has the overbearing claws in me. Even in my psyche, the poison is there. Ah! You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
You're going to be fine if you start recognizing you can take this thing to its very core and it will strengthen you. That takes faith, by the way. Well, that also takes a recognition that your commitment to life sucks. Mm-hmm. And so, while the acceptance was a commitment to life, I'm going to learn commitment, and that's really what marriage is, right? Anything you build involves commitment.
Right.
And most people don't know what that is, because that involves sacrifice, and sacrifice involves the existential, and sacrifice also implies that there is the best version of you, and that does exist, yet there's some things you need to give up or direct it towards. It serves your best interest.
Yeah.
And so then, okay, then maybe a year later, and what did the dream look like? Well, at first it was my mom and my ex, and then eventually it didn't become my mom and my ex, it became my mom and a different kind of girl. Well, that's progress.
What kind of girl?
It would always be the object of desire. It would always be the thing that I wanted to experience.
But there was no more X in this one.
No more X in this one, right? So then there he goes. There's something healing there.
Yeah.
And then eventually it would turn into not my mother, but a woman that looks like my mother that's romantically involved with me.
Oh, that's...
And then, isn't this powerful?
Yeah.
Because it's showing you what healing looks like. It's changing its manifestation every time I look back. And then I was like, okay, well, there's this Moroccan, olive-skinned brunette that's Jewish and madly in love with me that I'm not very attracted to, that I'm kind of not that into. And she has a sexy roommate. And her sexy roommate has thick blonde hair, really big boobs, and she's super horny. And even in the midst of me with this Moroccan Jewish girl, I'm noticing that I'm not really that into it. She had scars on her body, right? And this is really powerful because you could even say, well, this is the humanity of the feminine integrated to this thing. And I'm actually healing my relationship with the feminine. Holy shit, that'll transform me as a man. And then at first, they would always be in separate rooms. And there would always be the brunette that I'm pushing off and the blonde that I want. And then now, even recently at this point in my life, I realized that it's not the brunette or the blonde in different rooms or in different places, then I have to leave one in order to be with the other. They're both in the same room, and their hair colors have both changed. One from a not deep dark black to a like a light brunette, almost blonde, to a strawberry blonde. And they're both in the same room. And we're being intimate with each other. And you're like, well, that's an exciting threesome dream. Well, it's also the fact that they're all in the same room with each other. But I did notice, I still didn't really lean towards the brunette. I had a hard time receiving it. I like the thing that I could direct myself towards, but simultaneously protect myself from.
Yeah.
But now, from my mother kicking down the bathroom door and catching me, right, in the act of intimacy, or the way it's looking now, I think I'm doing pretty well, right? And the thing is that's really beautiful is that every time I had these dreams, I felt despair and hopelessness. And what I want this to be about is a recognition of everything that you call you. It's a big playground. Get familiar.
Yeah.
What do you think it is to have parents that love you?
I mean, it's the world.
It's the world. It's the world. And I recognize that not only is that something you will be given, because that's what you are when you're born in this world. You're given a place to fuck up, a place to play, a place to learn. No one's ever had the safety to experience their humanity.
Yeah.
And this is the very thing that I've created here in my business, with my community, and with the people I have, is that for the first time, they're like, I can be. That's exactly what a home is. And you have to understand that the home is the way you construct and connect a person to a soul, as you help build the person, and then you nurture that very thing.
Yeah.
And you give people the willingness to choose the love that they can give to this world. And it's a choice you make. And I realize that I'm not held at punishment. Most people only do good because they'll be hit if they don't.
Right.
What if you weren't hit and you were given permission to run off? I mean, that's when you're given the car keys to go ahead and do the thing that, your parents maybe warned you from, but then you start recognizing they want me to learn something here, and maybe they're right. I'm gonna turn the car back. I feel connected to that very thing. Why is it we need to resist it? And so then, of course, that goes into the ego and a whole lot of different kind of conversations. But at the end of it all, I recognize that there's a loving home that every person has for themselves, that they cannot believe to be true, that exists within them, that it heals their past, their present, and it builds their future. And I've recognized the three common wounds that people all suffer from is abandonment, which is past, rejection, which is present, disappointment, which is future. Now, all of these things are core level wounds, and these wounds play into how people perceive reality and where these things really birth from. To live in a world where all of these things exist inside of you would be God neglecting you, to never allow you to realize that you need something to allow you to turn in. And when the nightmare gets worse, go deeper. You'll recognize you're on the other side of a dream.